know, it's 2022 and somehow we're all still here. You know what that means. Things could still get worse.
Target remains. I repeat, target remains.
That's right, I'm back from break, guys and gals, and it's my sincere pleasure to welcome you to a brand new year here at Degreelessness, the sun that brings the dawn of our final doom. I'm your beloved host, 21st century digital boy, high-tech lowlife, ambassador of antipathy, the sultan of sarcasm, the people's champion, and of course, your good buddy in the mix, the immortal, adorable, and irrepressible Shanghai Pete. I was in the middle of working on a retrospective video for Secret of Mana after work last night, and then this popped up in my Reddit feed. Microsoft by Activision Blizzard. Yeah, holy fuck. You know what that means. It's time to get deep inside. Simply can't be helped. Now, I'm going to make an effort here to not bury the lead as I so often tend to do, so let's cover the basics first. As you've no doubt heard by now, in a move that's quickly becoming a staple of Microsoft's modern business strategy, much like they did a little over a year ago with Bethesda, ZeniMax, and others, they've now acquired Activision Blizzard as well, for a whopping $68 fucking billion. That's like fantasy money. That's the amount of money that no reasonable person can even wrap their mind around. So, from Call of Duty to World of Warcraft and Diablo, Big Daddy Microsoft is taking a cue from Big Daddy Disney. Uh-oh. It probably won't surprise you that the takes on this are all over the map while simultaneously achieving the miraculous feat of almost being entirely wrong as well. Everything is covered from baseless doomsaying to apoplectic fits of panic to pornographic corpo knob slobbing, though, as is frequently the case, the truth is somewhere in the middle, at least in my opinion. Let's start by talking about all the possibilities for something bad to go wrong here. Quite obviously, I think one of the most glaring signaling issues with this move by Microsoft is, of course, the general aversion most of us have to monopolies of any type, and rightly so. Less competition in markets is almost universally a bad thing. And especially after their acquisition of ZeniMax, I don't think it's a stretch to be more than a little concerned about the sheer army of developers that are now wholly owned and controlled by Microsoft, because it's a fucking lot. This now puts a sizable portion of some of the biggest games in existence under Microsoft's direct control. While no one can say yet whether that's ultimately a good thing or not, one thing's for sure, it's definitely concerning. This now makes Microsoft Gaming the number 3 gaming company by revenue in existence, behind only Sony and Tencent. That's monstrous. Even if they were the most benevolent, customer-focused, creative, and visionary company in the history of the world, that would still be seriously fucking dangerous for gaming in general. I simply don't think that there's any circumstances where having only 3 companies competing in any given market can ever be a good thing. Now, any discussion about the possible bad ramifications of this must include the possibility that, having now taken a position of ownership over so many games, Microsoft may simply intend to just ruin everything and drive them directly into the ground, either by blindly chasing short-term profits in a reckless, short-sighted rampage, or by mass purging everyone, including the few actual talented people that may remain. As I said in my video about Microsoft's last huge acquisition, I think the odds of that happening are extremely slim. It just makes no sense to spend $70 billion on some of the biggest gaming IPs just to immediately hollow all the value out of them. And so far, it seems like I've been right. Doom Eternal remains awesome, its expansions were awesome, and id Software, Obsidian, Double Fine, and their other recently acquired studios appear by all accounts to be completely unaffected to this day. I mean, that could change obviously, but right now, they seem fine. And of course, let's also not forget just what a sorry fucking state most of Blizzard and Activision's franchises are in right now. Their most recent Call of Duty, while not quite rising to the level of sheer disaster that Battlefield did, I mean, but honestly, what did? It was still generally a pile of shit. It was a pile of shit last year, too. And as for Blizzard's games, well, the most baseline tolerable stuff that they've put out in years are remakes and re-releases of games from almost 2 decades ago. So that right there should tell you about how well they're doing right now. As for the rest of their stuff, well, let's take a look at their monthly active user numbers. Yeah, not what I would call a stunning success, and that's with all the lawsuits, sexual harassment, suicide, breast milk stealing aside. It would be very difficult to make this worse, if that's even Microsoft's intent, and I don't think that it is. Needless to say, I feel like I have to repeat this in every fucking video, but that's because it should be repeated. Never trust a billion-dollar corporation to do anything other than make money. That's all it wants to do because it wasn't designed to be able to do anything else. Sometimes, quite often in fact, that causes inconvenient collateral damage in the form of, utterly ruining whatever it is they're currently using to make said money. Video games, movies, comic books, whatever.
Oops!
But other times, though increasingly rarely, corporations making their money requires that the games actually remain intact and decent, or at least relatively unruined. And fortunately for us, I think this is one of those times. So no, I do not think that Microsoft spent 70 billion fucking dollars just to see if maybe they can figure out ways to destroy Blizzard's IPs that Blizzard themselves haven't already tried. They've been pretty fucking thorough, I'd say. The possibility still exists, of course, can't rule it out, and that's why we mention it here in the bad news section. I just think it's probably pretty remote. Okay, so maybe they won't intentionally ruin anything, but what if they decide to make your favorite shallow zoomer shooter an Xbox exclusive? Oh no! I think you can relax on that one as well. Games like Call of Duty make far too much money to all of a sudden make it a console exclusive. That just doesn't make any sense. And that includes Battle.net too. Now, first of all, I don't give a fuck about Battle.net. As many of you know, I don't really play games online aside from classic WoW. And if they fuck with Battle.net for that, I'll just go back to playing private servers. I don't really give a shit. But what about Steam? Xbox's current policy is to put its PC games on Steam, but now that they own the Battle.net platform, will they move everything there and make it an exclusive platform and competitor to Epic and Steam's offerings? Many people have been speculating exactly that, and maybe it'll become the new home of PC Game Pass, and while I agree that's a possibility, I don't know, I just don't care. I don't think you should either. First, if that does happen, it'll be a case where this acquisition generates more competition, not less, so that would actually be kind of good in the long run. As I've said before, I pirate most of my AAA PC games. I only buy indie ones. I advise you to do the same as well. I don't like Steam. I don't think it makes a very compelling argument for why I should relinquish control over software I've purchased and would prefer not to use it at all, but of course I've been forced to, so when I can't get around it, yes, I use it. I hate it, but I use it. I absolutely refuse to use the Epic Game Store though, so I would argue that anything that moves people away from the Epic Store and provides at least rudimentary competition to Steam is, I guess, probably a good thing. Even though I absolutely abhor digital storefronts in general, I would honestly prefer to install games using a physical Blu-ray instead, at least. Then I would be in full control of what games I played. But that's not the world we live in. So anything that'll come in and fuck up the monopoly of Steam, even if it's Battle.net or I guess the Epic Game Store, it's ultimately going to be better than just handing the entire market over to Valve without question. So I guess fine. I think it's also worth mentioning some of the more obvious, albeit less gaming focused and more human costs of this whole thing. I am the people's champion, after all. Microsoft was already the second wealthiest company on the fucking planet. So you can bet this is gonna have some seriously nightmarish consequences for employees of likely all companies involved. People are gonna lose their jobs. Entire teams, buildings, maybe even studios worth of employees are likely gonna get completely fucked. And after all the dust settles, we'll be looking at the increasingly ruined corpse of modern video games. So remember, Activision Blizzard is also known as Activision Blizzard King, a company that was itself a merger of three already huge companies. This is just the beginning. Disaster capitalism only wants more, and to paraphrase TJ Kirk, Economos is never satisfied. No amount of money is enough, and no amount of destroyed towns, lives, relationships, and jobs crushed beneath its wake will ever sate it. Disney bought Pixar, then they bought Marvel, Take-Two bought Zynga, Tencent bought Supercell, Google and Apple buy fucking everything else. And let's not even get started on Amazon and all the voracious wreck and ruin that spreads out from anything they touch like a goddamn cancer. Remember Microsoft's last acquisition back in 2020 when they bought ZeniMax? You know how much that was? Not even 8 billion. This is fucking 70. Nintendo is only worth 61 billion. This sets a brand new obscene precedent, which we can only look forward to being shattered probably within the next couple weeks. I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times, we live in hell. We may be in hell, but luckily for us, there's still some dope games to play here. So let's talk about the potential upsides of this whole catastrophe. The main one, I think, is obviously Game Pass. Game Pass, if you don't know, is actually a relatively good deal. It has a shit ton of games on it, far better than PS Plus or any comparative service. Game Pass on its own is a significant motivation to buy into the Xbox ecosystem, and that, of course, is very much on purpose. Microsoft is not a hardware-reliant company the way Sony is. Most people, when asked what is the center of Sony's gaming business, they're going to say the PS5. Conversely, the center of Microsoft's is most definitely not the Xbox, no matter what they want to call it. It's the Game Pass. Not only is it likely one of their largest sources of revenue with over 25 million current subscribers, it also is the primary means by which they get people hooked into their ecosystem. And since it holds such a high value position in Microsoft's pantheon of business pillars, it stands to reason that they're already talking about loading it the fuck up with Activision and Blizzard games too. And I mean, at least in the short term, that's actually good for everybody. More games offered in the Game Pass means more value for us as consumers, which means more customers hooked into their ecosystem from Microsoft. Not exactly something to throw a party about, but overall a smart move that'll easily keep them afloat since Sony will never do anything on the same level that offers an equal amount of value to their customers. Think you're gonna see God of War Ragnarok day one free for subscribers? I fucking doubt it. On the other hand, think about all the shit that's already on Games Pass. Then add to that Call of Duty, Warcraft, Diablo, Tony Hawk, Overwatch, Spyro, Hearthstone, Guitar Hero, StarCraft, all that shit being on there. I mean, any way you slice it, it's pretty crazy, G's, not gonna lie. And believe it or not, another potential good outcome from this is that it may actually save several of Blizzard's IPs that most people, including me, had given up on and were likely, literally until the day of this announcement, circling the fucking drain. I'm by no means slobbing the MS knob here, but I haven't believed Blizzard capable of shepherding their IPs successfully for years. So literally anyone taking the reins away from them is practically guaranteed to be an improvement over what we're currently getting. Whether you believe that up until now it was Big Bobby Kotick pulling the Blizzard strings, maybe some other ghouls in a boardroom at Activision, or just your standard run-of-the-mill sexually harassing idiots at Blizz HQ, no matter how you look at it, it's indisputable that whoever it's been, they've been doing an absolutely obscenely horrible job at it. So, the way I see it, there is quite literally nothing to lose by putting Blizz's management in different hands, whose ever hands they fucking may be. And if those hands happen to be the same ones that have been handling Bethesda, Arcane, and id Software recently, all the better, I think. Only upsides here, G's, Blizzard doesn't deserve to have anything to do with most of their IPs right now as far as I'm concerned. So, like a toddler who's making a mess with their toys, someone's gotta take them the fuck away. Looks like that someone's Microsoft in this case. I thought I had more stuff for the good list, but looks like I don't. So let's wrap it up right here like we closed the bad section by talking about the people that this affects. Number one, Big Bobby Kotick is confirmed out. That's awesome because obviously fuck that guy. I mean, I guess it's not awesome because he's just gonna fuck off with a golden parachute, likely worth upwards of hundreds of millions of dollars, leaving a pile of workplace misconduct issues in his wake. But if you had to find an upside to that, I guess it's probably that Microsoft doesn't fuck around when it comes to stuff like that. And it's probably something on the level of this kind of leadership changeup that's gonna be necessary for the hard, long work of cleaning house and just getting the fuck rid of anyone that's causing problems. So, I guess that's generally good for anyone still being tormented in the workplace over there, so hooray? At this point, you might be thinking about what this means for both the console wars and gaming overall, so let's talk about that next. With Microsoft making all these huge acquisitions recently, what about the eternal struggle with Sony and PlayStation versus Xbox? I doubt they're even thinking about PlayStation right now, and to paraphrase PC Gamer, nothing about this strategy feels like it's designed around two bootleg PCs fighting over who gets to live under your TV. This is way bigger than that, and when discussing who Microsoft's competitors are now, you need to think more broadly. Sony, I mean, sure, yeah, but also like we mentioned earlier, Tencent, who owns, among many other companies, Riot, a developer who's loudly touted themselves as the new Blizzard. As PC Gamer also pointed out, what better way to compete with the new Blizzard than by just buying the old Blizzard and maybe fixing its shit up while you're at it? By my guess, this is just an extension of the strategy I theorized that Microsoft was implementing back in 2020 when they bought ZeniMax. They're trying to transition into gaming as Disney. I'm obviously not the first person to make that observation, but I do think there's a reason for that, and that's because it's exactly what they're doing. Now, to be fair, they're also doing a really good job at it so far. When you really get down to it though, the main point is this. In the short term, this will likely be pretty good for us customers. Blizzard's IPs get rescued and hauled out of the garbage, maybe cleaned up a little bit. Maybe Steam gets some competition in the digital storefront market. Perhaps Phil Spencer somehow manages to stave off the inevitable cancer of NFTs for a few more years, and Game Pass gets even more games, becomes an even better value. In the short term. In the long term, consolidating all developers into $3 or $4 trillion megacorps, it's not going to do anything but harm the industry. There's just no way around that. I don't like being the bearer of bad news. I mean, usually. But I think, regardless, this was pretty clear for everyone to see. Alright, let's close it out by just doing a quick TLDR of this whole fuckfest. Number 1, are all these franchises suddenly going to go PC Xbox exclusive? 1 or 2 temporarily, maybe, but the majority of them make far too much money on the platforms they already release on to just cock-block them off there for essentially no reason. Remember, the reason for a system exclusive is to get people to buy your system. Microsoft doesn't give a shit about that. Doing that would lose them money. Number 2, is Microsoft going to ruin all the Activision and Blizzard's IPs? Well, like we said before, obviously not. They're already ruined. If anything, Microsoft's involvement will likely improve them. Number 3, will Microsoft yank games from Steam in order to hoard them all behind Battle.net and the Battle.net app? I actually think this one probably has a reasonably good chance of occurring, or at least something like it. It would help incentivize more users into the Microsoft ecosystem, and that's exactly what they want. As I've said before, I guess I don't really care either way, though. I already begrudgingly use Steam as well as the Battle.net app for WoW Classic, and I don't pay for AAA PC games unless it's absolutely necessary. See, the key to people tolerating this, I think, is the use of the existing Battle.net app. You want to push more games to an app or launcher I already use? Fine, I guess. But if you want me to download, register, and run in the background a whole new fucking app that's just going to be another thing sitting there in the system tray, harvesting system resources and collecting data from me, no, that's fuck you. Not a chance. I'm not doing that. And lastly, number 4, is this overall a good or bad thing for the industry? Short term, it's probably pretty good. Long term, it's catastrophic. If you need to see more reasons why monopolies are always bad, I mean, go Google that shit. I'm not going to repeat it again. Here's the calculus that Microsoft is making. It doesn't take a genius to see that that spot under your TV currently occupied by a video game console, it's not going to be occupied for much longer, and definitely not long enough to make fighting over it worthwhile. Supply chain issues, the popularity of streaming services, plus the advancement of internet infrastructure makes the onset of cloud gaming inevitable. Internet infrastructure is currently good enough to make Stadia, remember that, already a thing. I mean, a shitty thing, granted, but a thing nonetheless. So if net speeds are already enough to sort of pull off cloud gaming, how long do you think it's going to be until they're actually good enough to do it well? Yeah, not too long, maybe 5 years. And how much do you think Microsoft is going to care about fighting with Sony over whose shitty PC people are buying after that happens? Yeah, not at all. Their solution is to make having a physical Xbox no longer a requirement for engaging with Microsoft games. Think about it. If Sony wants you to buy into their gaming ecosystem, they need to sell you a PlayStation. There's no way around it. If you do not have a PlayStation, Sony isn't making money from you. But with Microsoft's plan, they just got to get people to sign up for Game Pass, which after this acquisition will allow people to engage with Microsoft gaming from a new Xbox, an old Xbox, a phone, a tablet, an iPad, a PC, a laptop, whatever. Then when their cloud gaming becomes a realistic option, they just flip a switch and now everybody can just stream all their fucking games regardless of what you own. And in most streaming services, well, content is all that matters. So they want to be sure that they have the most content. I mean, I don't like that they've decided that the best way to do that is simply buying every fucking conceivable game dev with a semi-valuable IP, but it is undeniably a pretty smart strategy if you're Microsoft. So that, my friends, is the good, bad, the how, and the why behind why they're doing what they're doing. Yeah, it's pretty fucking insane. Alright, that's our show. Thank you so much for watching. It's great to be back with everybody. I hope this wretched year finds you all healthy and safe along with your families. It's fucking rough out there. At least we have video games for a little while. The Microsoft thing is admittedly pretty huge. Definitely the largest acquisition of its type in the games industry and well, ever. So yeah, it's actually kind of fucking crazy, but I don't really think it's anything to panic over. It's not going to be anything super drastic, at least for a while. Strangely enough, I'm actually kind of excited. I've loved Blizzard games since I was a kid, and being forced to watch them self-destruct in the most horrific, galling, inexcusable way possible over the past couple years has not exactly been fun. Their self-destruction has been so thorough, in fact, that it really was going to take something as monumental as Microsoft just straight up buying them to give any of their franchises even a prayer of turning things around. And since that's exactly what happened, I think that's actually kind of sick. I'm sure in the long run everything will be ruined no matter what, of course, but for now we can try to have some fun. And speaking of fun, we'll have news and details about the Patreon coming up within the next 2 weeks, which rules, as well as the first episode in our retrospective series covering my favorite game of all time, Secret of Mana for Super Nintendo. That was originally going to be our first video of the new year, but then all this happened, so you know how that goes. Anyways, thanks for chilling with us tonight. Spend this little bit of your free time here. We love you today. We absolutely love you all the fucking way. Stay tuned for next week when we will inevitably take this greedy horror show of an industry down another few pegs and have some fun with old Super Nintendo games while we're at it. And as for the rest of this shit, like, I'm trying to rock with you, Microsoft, but it's kind of like fuck you.
Woke up, smoke up, blunt, then I pass out. Pass out. Woke up, what up, smoke up, blunt, then I'm back down.